hello there, yes. Anyway, I did get my camera sorted out, which is good, so you don't have to put up with... Well, yeah, you do have to put up with this face, but at least it's at a vague distance, which feels safer. Put it that way, yeah. Anyway, yes, Sunday, and yesterday I was heavily engaged in, well, umpteen different things to do with jobs and stuff. But my eye was drawn to a bloke who appears to be cropping up all over the place in the last few days, Robert Bates of the Centre for Migration Control. He's the director of research there. Wow, I imagine there's an enormously huge staff. If you're the director of research, you must have at least you there. Yeah, indeed. Anyway, yeah, he's cropped up because the Centre for Migration Control have produced a report. Hooray! I wonder who they are. We'll come back to that. Economic inactivity amongst migrants aged 16 to 64, which, shock horror, comes up with the shock horror thing. That shock horror, migrants are more likely to be economically inactive than the indigenous white population, and by migrant we mean people that weren't born here. Something that isn't really made very clear in the research. The research is intriguing in its own right because it simply takes a whole bunch of numbers and says, there you go, make of that what you will, which isn't really the way that research works. Unfortunately for Robert, I don't know if he's married or not, he might be masturbates, I don't know. But anyway, unfortunately for him, the link to the data that is used contains a link to his desktop, and well, I don't have access to that, so I've had to look at other things. You can find some of the things I've looked at down below. Yes, it's a tricky subject because the sociologist in me, the sociologist head that I have, tends to think, well, fine, we can take things very much at face value, but then we have to ask the question why, which suddenly becomes more problematic. And you know, I'm sure Mr. Robert Bates doesn't want anyone to believe that he simply thinks that certain people are genetically predisposed to lazing around and taking money from the white man. That would obviously be a foolish thing, and I'm in no way suggesting that he is suggesting that. That would be foolish. Obviously, we all know that. But, you see, you know, sometimes people will come out with things like, you know, for example, the higher rate of black and other minority ethnic groups within the prison population, and suggest, as they do sometimes, that means that they're inherently of a criminal, biologically criminal nature. And, well, no, it's not the way it works out, is it? Because economic inactivity happens for a number of different reasons. Now, 16 to 64 is obviously going to include quite a lot of students one way or another, and it's also going to include quite a lot of mothers one way or another. And the moment we start factoring those things in, particularly when we look at the numbers, for example, from people that were born originally, came from Pakistan or Bangladesh, we end up with much, much higher figures. And we might well think about that in terms of those demographics and what exactly is going on within those communities. Because if those people have arrived here later than the indigenous white population, you know, Angles, Saxons, Jutes, all that lot, you know, later on, then they might well be differently affected by different economic circumstances, especially in close-knit communities that might well have more of a leaning towards a pastoral past than your average Brit like me, if you like, yeah? So in other words, they might well have more kids who are in full-time education, skewing the figures. They might also be having more kids and therefore be carers of those kids, and therefore skew the figures. They also might have parents that don't have such easy access to care facilities in their old age and are therefore looked after within the community, requiring carers, skewing the figures. Now, it's very, very hard to tell, but it would appear that Rob, with his generic I'm a right-winger face, is just, well, not really bothered with asking those questions, which is a bit odd for a researcher that they don't ask questions. Now, the Centre for Migration Control do get a reasonable amount of press in places like the Telegraph, but you can find no information about them whatsoever on the web. They are simply the Centre for Migration Control. There's no company attached to them, but they were launched from Tufton Street, no doubt because it was handy for the tube. Anyway, I look forward to seeing that generic pasty white face of Mr. Bates on a lot of sofas in time to come, and I'm sure he'll definitely be working with his hard-working team of researchers, probably dozens of them, maybe not, and he'll give us a more fulsome explanation as to why these figures are different for different groups, because I'm intrigued, you see. I ask awkward questions, something a researcher should do, but, well, perhaps not Mr. Bates, eh? I wonder if he's married. Anyway, do have a lovely Sunday if you can. Personally, I need to go out and do things. Yeah, I'm going to come back and do things. And then suddenly it's Monday again, isn't it? Anyway, do have a good one. Stay dry if you can.